Welcome to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with our very special guest, Alka Joshi, and she's here to share with us her new novel, The Henna Artist. Now, Alka is a graduate of Stanford University and received her MFA from the California College of the Arts. She has worked as an advertising copywriter, a marketing consultant, and an illustrator. Alka was born in India, and her family came to the United States when she was 9 years old. So let's welcome to the show, Alka Joshi.
Thank you so much for having me, Marianne. I'm excited to be here.
You know, what an honor it is to have you here. My goodness, I've heard so much about your book. And congratulations, by the way, because I heard it also made the Reese Witherspoon Book Club.
Yes, that was a completely out of the blue phenomenon. I was so shocked when that happened. I was just like, really? Wow, she actually has a copy of the book. She's actually read a copy of the book. I was just flabbergasted. It's been such a wild ride, and I have enjoyed every single moment of it. When the book was released, it was March 3rd, and the publisher had high hopes for it. We had scheduled a bunch of bookstore readings. I had this fabulous launch planned with an Indian dancer, a classical dancer who was going to come and dance through some of the scenes that I was going to read out loud. We had 150 people signed up for the launch, and everything went by the wayside when the pandemic struck. So I never got a chance to be in front of readers. Well, imagine my surprise when on March 11th, my publisher called and said, Reese Witherspoon is picking this book for the month of May. So I have been busy the entire time of the pandemic. I thought, oh my goodness, here I am. I'm just going to, cry in my soup here for the rest of the time that the pandemic is going on. But it hasn't turned out to be that way, because when you're a Reese Book Club pick, you have to, work with them and devise some interesting content for the month that your book is going to be featured. And so I have been doing videos, and we've been doing cooking demonstrations. And, I've been putting together essays for them that they've been peppering throughout the month about how you wear Indian saris, the kind of jewelry that my mother inherited for her wedding, and also pictures of her wearing those pieces. So, there's been, and then all the spices and the fragrances that are involved in the book, which help it come to life. So I've been really, really, really busy, which I had not expected once the pandemic started.
I know this pandemic has really, put us all in a totally different mindset. And it's really difficult for new authors, because there have been so many adjustments and so many changes, and especially when we look at all the industries that have been impacted as well. And so I have to really congratulate you, because it says a lot about your writing. It says a lot about your book. And I know that Reese Witherspoon's, book club isn't the only, accolade that this book has received.
Oh, thank you so much, Marianne. That is such a delight to hear. I never, in my 10-year journey of writing this book, expected it to reach as many people as it has, and to touch their hearts the way that it has. Every single day, I hear from readers on social media or through an email that I get from somebody who's found me through the hennaartist.com. I hear from them about how this book is changing their lives. And what they're seeing is that the main character, Lakshmi, and all the different women that are represented in the novel, they all have different desires. They all have different dreams. And women are seeing themselves in one or another of the characters. And they are finding the courage to either reinvent their lives the way Lakshmi did, or to reimagine a different future for themselves. Some of them are taking up writing for the first time, because they know that I didn't take up writing until I was 51 years old. And hey, I'm not dead. So, some of them are taking up writing, some of them are taking up a new career, and some of them are questioning the validity of the choices they have made in their lives, and re-examining and seeing if maybe they should make some different choices.
Well, I mean, I'm so thrilled for you because I know as a new author, I mean, this is your first book that's been released and you're getting such great acclaim. And that's why I keep pushing on that because it really shows women what's possible if you just stretch your boundaries and go, hey, you know what? This might be a little uncomfortable, but I'm going to go for it.
Yes. I was doing a virtual book club just the other night, and it was a group of women. Some of them were in London, some of them were in Maryland, some of them were in South Carolina. And they were telling me, these are women of all ages. So some of them were in their 20s and some of them are in their 50s. And they're telling me that even though we have come far in terms of giving women the ability to have a voice and to speak up in all kinds of conversations, there is still so much work to be done. And even the young women were asking me during our virtual book group, they were saying, so, I'm in a work situation. How do I get recognized without coming off as being too aggressive? I want to be assertive, but not pushy. And women have to navigate so many of these things that far more delicately, I think, than men have to. And in the same way that Lakshmi, in the henna artist, and this is why we were talking about this in the book group, in the same way that she has to navigate this world in the 1950s in India that wasn't made for her. The rules were not made for a single woman. The rules were not made for a woman who wanted more than she was allowed to dream about. And so a lot of our women today are still struggling with the same issues of how do I fit into this world that is not of my construct, that is of somebody else's construct, from centuries ago. And I need to find my place in it. I need to find my voice in it. How do I go about doing that? I wish, Marianne, that there were a template for everybody. I wish there were an easy way to tell women, okay, you just follow these 10 steps and you'll get there. But each woman has to find her own way, because I think our trajectory in the corporate world, our trajectory in the larger business world has been so thwarted, at various points along the way, that we don't have a clear path yet. And it is up to every woman to find her way. But I seriously believe, the way that my mother believed, that if she couldn't live the life she wanted to, she could make sure that her daughter could. And I can make sure that all of the women in my circle get to realize their dreams, because I can pay it forward. What my mother did for me was such an incredible gift. She was an Indian woman in an arranged marriage in 1955 to my father. She was yanked out of college, and her father said, "You are too old. You're getting to be a spinster. I've got 5 other daughters behind you that have to get married. We've got to get you married now." He was so worried that she was going to end up a spinster at 18. So they find, the partner for her, my dad. My parents get married, and within 4 years, she has 3 kids. And, that's not unusual because, in the 50s, 60s here in this country, that's exactly what used to happen, right?
Yeah.
But my mother, I know that she had postpartum depression after every child, and it was not diagnosed. Back then, I don't think anybody even understood what postpartum depression was throughout the world. So she had a really hard time, and she felt very alone and lonely, and she was far from her family and far from my husband's family, because my father was an engineer and he was getting promoted all the time. So we moved from city to city to city. We had moved 5 times by the time that I was 9 years old and we got ready to come to America. So, she was alone. She was depressed. She didn't have the wherewithal or the training or the background to say, hey, I matter and I need help and I want somebody to come and help me. And these are the ways in which I could be helped. Please help me. My father, I think, was at a loss as to how to help her. So when she did finally regain her footing, when we arrived in the United States, she is looking all around. 1967, really a seminal moment in U.S. history. The Vietnam War is raging. Laugh-In, that crazy show with all of the hippies singing and dancing on TV. Laugh-In is a show that's on television. Women are said to be burning bras everywhere. Gloria Steinem is making it big with her Playboy article. And so she is seeing all of these women around her and all of this culture that is so different from anything she has ever known, where women have freedoms that she has never experienced. And she said to herself, I have but one daughter, and I am going to make sure that she gets to be the kind of girl that can make her own decisions about her life in a way I never got to. Isn't that remarkable, Marianne? For a woman who came from a culture that was so conservative and so repressive and so patriarchal.
Your mother was so forward thinking. I mean, how impressive is that?
Yes. I think a lot of immigrants feel like they really need to hold on to their cultural upbringing and to inculcate their children with those same morals and cultural traditions that they grew up with. And my mother was just not that person. And thank God she wasn't, because I did get to go to college and major in art history, which is really what I loved. I got to go to study in Florence for a year because Stanford had a program in Florence that I could go to. And even though my parents could ill afford to send 3 children to very expensive private colleges, they made it happen. They took out loan after loan. They just made it happen, and they made sure that each one of us had a chance to live our dreams and our lives. The only thing my mother said to me is, please don't get pregnant before you finish college. And also, please make sure that you are going to have a career that can sustain you. Because, you're always welcome to come back home, honey. But I want you to be able to sustain yourself financially, because the world is an uncertain place and there are no guarantees. And you need to, as a woman in particular, need to make sure that you will always be financially sustainable. And so I took all of her words to heart. I mean, I really thought that was an amazing gift that she gave me, all these lessons, and but without any imposition of a moral code or even a life code that I needed to hang on to. There were no rules that she gave me except don't get pregnant and make sure you have a career that is financially viable.
That's great advice at that time, though, because when you look at it, I mean, during that time, I mean, there was so much that was going on, so yeah, that's perfect advice for a mom to give.
I used to think that if a parent died, that somehow they were gone forever. But my mother is with me every single day. We lost her in 2012, about 2 years after I had started working on the novel, or maybe 3 years. And I missed her terribly. And because I wrote this novel as a way of reimagining her life, as a way of reimagining her as a woman who could escape the bonds of her upbringing and fashion a new career for herself and emerge in a whole different city and make herself this entrepreneurial woman who was doing amazing things in healing people, I thought, this is a life I can reimagine for my mother, even though she didn't get to live it in reality. In fiction, she's going to be a star. And my mother got to read many passages. I read them aloud to her, and she loved the book. She loved the concept, and she always encouraged me to keep going. And so I feel her presence every single day. I felt her presence every time I picked up a pen to start writing or at the computer to finish another page. I feel her presence every time I see a ladybug because she loved ladybugs. And I always feel like ladybugs show up in my life when I most need them. Like when I need a word of encouragement, I see a ladybug and I go, oh, hi, Mom. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Oh, I love that.
You know, we all have talismans, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all have these little symbols or these icons that we carry around from either our childhood or our parents or, you know, something that gives us comfort. And ladybugs give me a lot of comfort.
I absolutely love that. You know, I look at that as well. It's like when I see ladybugs, I'm like, oh, that's so sweet. That's so special. And to have that deep connection with your mother and the signs that you receive, I think that that's really empowering.
Yeah. Right after Mom died, you would not believe I saw ladybugs everywhere. Like every day I would see 5 or 6 of them. And I know it's kind of strange, but and I'm not really I mean, I'm not like a believer in lots of different kinds of things, but spiritually, I think that there's a connection there. I think we always have a connection to our loved ones when they leave us physically. I think that they're always with us in some way in our imagination or in our thoughts or memories. And, you know, it's funny, I've never actually dreamed about my mom in all the time that she's been gone because I feel like she's alive in my mind all the time.
Oh, yeah, you know, and you can feel that connection. And it reminds me of your book too. I mean, there's so much connection that readers and our listeners, obviously, when they buy the book, they'll feel as well. But there's this deep connection, you know, with women supporting one another in your book.
Mm-hmm. In the writing process, and I think the reason it took me 10 years to complete this book, in the writing process, a writer actually has to go pretty deep into their own psyche in order to develop characters that are deep. I didn't realize that at the beginning because I was just learning how to write creatively. But as I went on and as various people helped me, and by the way, Marianne, I think this is a really important point about writing. Writing is not an individual effort. You may come up with the initial idea, but there are tons of people who are going to help you make that book better. There are your professors or any kind of instructor you've ever had, whether it's in an evening class or some kind of an MFA program. There are the students in your classes who are going to give you all kinds of feedback when you workshop your manuscript. There are editors that you work with who are going to read your book for the first time, even though you've been living with it for a long time, and they're going to see things in there that you are not able to see because you're too close to it. And then there's your agent who is also going to give you some kind of feedback. If they're a really good agent, they're reading your book also with a keen eye towards women who are going to be reading it and what their takeaway is going to be. So they give you feedback. So all these people gave me amazing feedback over the years. And every single time, characters became more alive in my mind, and they became deeper as a result of some criticism or some kind of a comment that I got from a reader. So now I understand what it is to show a reader the depth of emotion so that they feel connected to the characters in the book. You know, that is actually a learned process. I don't think it comes naturally. And I think for everyone out there who is writing a piece of fiction, if you want readers to connect with your characters, you will have to go pretty deep into your own life, into your own psyche, into your own feelings about things, and immerse your characters in what you're feeling, and that will come out on the page. And you know, as a writer, you write about characters who are likable and who are unlikable. So you have to mine different parts of your personality to make that happen. For example, there's a character in the book, there's the husband, right? There's the husband of Lakshmi, and I made him a very unsympathetic character to begin with. The reason she has to leave her marriage is because he is physically abusing her, and he is not respecting her. And after 2 years, she's had enough, and she escapes. She deserts that marriage, and he has no idea she's even gone, but she deserts the marriage, and she goes to another city and reemerges and kind of reinvents herself. But the in writing the Hari character, the husband character, I really had to go into kind of a dark place. It's writers have to go into places they don't want to go to. So
Yeah.
I had to kind of go into a dark place with him. I had to go to a dark place with Parvati, who is Lakshmi's nemesis and, her biggest client, but also the wife of the man whom Lakshmi is attracted to. So I had to go into some, dark places with these people. And as the characters learn things about themselves throughout the novel, I'm learning things about myself and my perceptions and how I feel about different things in life. So in a strange sort of way, I think that writing a novel is like therapy. It's sort of like, you are going so deep into your consciousness that you may as well be your own therapist when you're writing a book.
Oh my goodness. Well, and isn't that true? Because you really bring these parts, of yourself into this book, and you have to dive into areas where, as you're talking, most people don't want to go. But at some point, does it feel like the characters start writing themselves?
Yes, in some scenes they do. So here's my process. I often have the idea of a scene in my head. Let's say it's two characters talking to one another, and one of them is revealing something about herself, and the other character is listening or commenting. So I have this idea of a scene. I will go walking, or I will go cycling, and I will go for, like a 3 to 4 mile walk or a 10-mile cycle or whatever. And during that time, as long as I'm moving, the scene is moving in my head. And as it's moving, I will imagine one character saying something, and then another character, is this is where it starts to write itself. The characters start talking to one another. And I go, I don't know if character one should be saying that. I think maybe character two should be a little angrier. And then I will revise the scene in my head, and then they are suddenly talking in a different way, with different emotions. So I'm like a director, and I'm telling the actors, more of this and less of that. And then they actually are writing the scene in my head. I have an iPhone with me always, and I will record what I have just imagined on my iPhone. And then when I get home, I transcribe it. And then I start really working on the scene, because when I transcribe it, it's going to be kind of rough. And maybe there are some parts of the dialogue that I think, I don't know, I can probably work on that a little bit more. So then I will keep working on the scene. Now I will leave that scene alone, and I will move on to the next scene. But the next day, I'm going to go back to the first scene, and I'm probably going to revise it even more. So in any page of the book where you are reading a scene between two people, three people, a group of people, I have probably revised that scene, minimum of 30 times, because it takes that long to get almost every word the way you want it to be, so that it feels right for those characters. Once you get to know your characters, you know that they wouldn't use the word school, they might use the word college. Once you get to know your characters, you know that they would be upset in this situation, but very calm in that situation. So I have to keep going back to scenes as I learn more about my characters and revising those scenes so that it fits their current character.
That is, I love how you have that process, because it really is kind of bringing it down to a place where you have this remarkable story that everyone's in love with, and it doesn't go the way most people would think.
Right. I know. I'm getting this thing from readers. The book is called The Henna Artist, and it has a glossary in the front. and it has Indian words that I have translated for people. But within the context of the actual story, most readers can figure out what the word actually means, because it's only a word here and a word there. It's not like entire passages are written in another language. But what readers tell me is this isn't the book they expected. They thought they were going to read a book, I don't know, about the partition in India in 1947, or they think they're going to read a book about, a woman's struggle, and this is just her life. They didn't realize that there were going to be so many other characters that come into her life and that are molding her life for her or pointing her in different directions. And they are, I think, pleasantly surprised at how easy the book is to read and also how quickly they finish it. I just heard from 2 or 3 readers this morning who said, I finished this in one day. I sat down and I couldn't pull myself away from it. And I just read the whole thing in one sitting. So that is always so lovely to hear, because it means that I did my job as a writer. I made it easy for people to delve into a story and to stay with it and to continue it until the finish line. There are many books that I pick up that I don't finish because for one reason or another, I have lost interest. And the writer's hardest job, I think, is to sustain a reader's interest throughout the book. It's just so difficult. Yeah, it's so difficult to keep the pacing. The pacing has to be even. It can go up and down a little bit, but it has to be enough tension has been built, enough suspense, enough of a storyline that keeps people moving forward.
So how much would you say that your family influenced your book?
Well, my father was one of the first group of young men after India gained its independence who really listened to the charge of the prime minister and the powers that be, who said, young men, go out there, become engineers and become architects and help us build the infrastructure of India. Dad said it was a phenomenal time, that energy that he felt, that India had its own nation back after 300 years of British domination, and that Indians finally were able to breathe and say, we are reinventing our whole country in the same way that Lakshmi is reinventing her life at the same time. That exuberance came from my dad, and it came from reading different things about India at the time that men like my dad really felt, like, oh my gosh, we have our country back and we're going to run it now the way we want it. My mom and dad were both born before independence, lived through independence, and then were in India after independence. So from both of them, I got a pretty good idea of what people were thinking and feeling at the time. There are several passages in the book that I borrowed from my parents' lives. For example, there's a section in there about how important it is for a woman to keep her wedding dowry jewelry. Her gold is really her retirement fund. For a woman to receive that wedding jewelry, it doesn't mean it's jewelry that she's going to wear every single day. It's a jewelry she puts away for a rainy day, if her husband were to die or leave or something were to happen. And in my mother's case, when the Indochina War happened in the 1960s, the Indian government asked for people to give their gold to the government so that they could finance the war along the border of China and India. And my father just took a bunch of my mother's gold and he gave it to the government. And my mother never forgave him in the same way that Lakshmi's mother never forgives her father for giving her gold up for the Quit India movement. So, like things like that, I borrowed that from my parents' lives. My mother's middle name is Latika, and that is the name of the young queen, the Maharani, in the book also. The palace chef, his name is Madhup, and that is my older brother's name. I put names in the book that are related to my immediate family. I also put in a lot of food in the book, a lot of Indian food, the curries, the spices we use, the oils and the herbs that we use every single day. Those are all in the book, and those are just from my upbringing, right? Because my mother was cooking Indian food. We all love Indian food to this day. And I think it's one of the reasons why my family has always been so healthy. You know, we eat a lot of those kind of spices. My father still to this day, my father's still alive. He's 87. He's going strong. He goes to the pool. Before lockdown, he was going to the pool and he was playing bridge like 5 times a week. So, he's a clever man, and he was a university professor. So, this is keeping his mind sharp. But he drinks a glass of warm milk with turmeric and honey in it almost every night. And that is for a good digestion. Indians believe that turmeric promotes good digestion. And so, that's what he drinks. And it helps him keep his joints flexible and, without pain. So I think that's a part of my upbringing and my family life that I incorporated in the book. And then I think, Lakshmi looks like my mother. She looks just like my mother. And my mother was born with these really light eyes that she inherited from her grandfather. And I inherited my mother's light eyes. My eyes are kind of a light gray blue. And so my parentage has always been under suspicion, as has my mother's. So I wrote that into the book because Lakshmi's eyes are constantly being commented upon by people who want to know, did she have an English father? Did she have an Anglo-Indian mother? How in the world did she get these light eyes when most Indians have really dark chocolate brown, eyes? And so I put that in there because all my life people have said, you're not really Indian, are you? Is one of your parents not Indian?
Oh, my.
And, and I always have to say, no, they're both Indian. And I just think, it's all those conquerors that came across the north of India where I'm from, Alexander the Great and Marco Polo and, Christopher Columbus was also looking for India, don't forget, when he found America, the continent. So, everybody wanted the silk, the spices, all the fabulous gold, the richness of India. And so there were a lot of conquerors who came through, and I'm sure at some point, one of my ancestors got involved with one of them. And so I ended up with blue-gray eyes, go figure. So, it's interesting, Marianne. I think a lot of people wonder if the fiction in the book is really the reality of the author's life. So I think what you asked is a really good question because I want to make it clear to readers. Sure, there are elements of my life and my parents' lives that are in here, but that doesn't mean that Lakshmi is always my mother or that Hari is always my father, or that, there's a Malik in my life who is, my little wise person who's always getting me out of trouble and obstacles. So I used to wonder the same thing when I was just a reader and not a writer. I used to think, I wonder if this author's life is exactly what they've written about in this book. Oh my goodness, did they really have that kind of childhood? Did that really happen to them? And it's great when a reader does think those things because it means that they're really invested in the book, right? They're reading it so closely that they think, oh, maybe this is the author's life. But in reality, it's a little bit of reality and then a lot of embellishment and a lot of fiction.
Well, I'm glad that you said that because I think a lot of times people do think that and they kind of have a hard time separating that fiction from reality, especially when it's such a page-turning read like The Henna Artist is.
Oh, that is really lovely to hear. My dad, I was talking to my dad and I said, Dad, I am so sorry. I know people must be thinking that you are just like the abusive husband in The Henna Artist, just because people assume that this might be my real life and my real father. And Dad goes, oh, don't worry about it. People who know me know I'm not that guy. And besides, he said, I've never driven a rickshaw in my life. He's like, he's very proud of the fact that he is a retired university professor and that he got a chance to educate a lot of young people about civil engineering and how to build buildings and infrastructure and so on. So, he's
Oh
very
my
proud of his
gosh.
life. He's not worried. I
Yeah.
do wish, however, Marianne, that my mother were still alive and she could see now the work that she poured into me to develop me as a self-realized woman. I wish she were here to see me now, because now that I'm talking to all of these book groups virtually who are reaching out and saying, Alka, will you join us for a book club discussion about the henna artist? I'm like, sure. And Reese Witherspoon and her fabulous people are always working with me on content for different things about the book. I wish she were here now and she could see how much it has all come to fruition, and that I could just thank her personally. I wish she was actually here physically so I could say, Mom, meet Marianne. She's interviewing me right now. Say hello. My mom had such a sense of humor that most probably, like if we were on a Zoom call and I said, Mom, come over here, look at all of these book club people that I'm talking to right now, she would probably edge me out of the way and sit down in the chair and say, okay, do you want to ask me anything?
Well, it's interesting, because this really close and sweet relationship you have with your mother, I'm sure that she had seen even before, this book came into being, that you are that independent woman who is making your own, pretty much blazing your own trail in the world and moving forward. And you're inspiring so many other women to do the same for themselves.
Oh, yeah, those are lovely words. And I love the fact that, this might actually be inspiring a lot of women. My mother saw in me things that I didn't see in myself. And I think maybe there are a lot of mothers out there who can see things in their own children that the children can't see in themselves. So I was very shy as a child. I was always trying to hide in the background. And my mother was always pushing me forward, saying, honey, you have things to say. You matter. You are beautiful. You are brave. You are smart. You are courageous. You can do all of these things. Don't hide in the background. Come out. Come out from that shell. And, as a kid, I was always so embarrassed by her wanting me to go out there. And I thought for a long time she was trying to live through me. I thought, oh, she didn't get to live this life, so now she wants to live it through me. And it wasn't until I was an adult and I had a more adult relationship with my mother that I realized, no, she had always seen something in me that she said she could bring out. And that's all she ever wanted, is for me to realize that I was whole and I was complete and I was fabulous just the way I was, just the way every woman, I think, is, regardless of where she is in her life. She is complete in and of herself.
I love that. Well, what final thoughts do you want to leave our listeners with? What do you want them to take away from this book?
I think I want them to take away that there are so many different kinds of women in this world. And as women, we need to support all of them. Whatever choices they make in their lives, it's okay. They're okay. You're okay with the choices you're making. Let's support each other. Let's not hurt each other. Let's always be the sister that our sisterhood wants us to be. Let's be encouraging. Let's be supportive. Let's be, the woman that I think my mother would have wanted us all to be, which is to say, I am whole, I am wonderful, and I think you're wonderful, and I think you're whole, and I want you to do the best you can in your life.
Oh my gosh, I love that. You're going to make me start crying.
Oh.
That is just beautiful. Well, where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn not just about your book, but all the events that you have going on as well?
They can find me on thehennaartist.com. And henna is spelled Henna. It's a wonderful art, 5,000-year-old art that is still being practiced today all over the world, not just by Indians, but all kinds of different people. So they can find me at thehennaartist.com. They can find me on Instagram, which, by the way, I love. I love Instagram. And they can find me at my handle at the Alka Joshi, or they can find me on Facebook. And that is also Alka Joshi 2019. They can find me there. Oh, and Marianne, if they have a book club and they're reading The Henna Artist and they want me to participate in their discussion, honey, I am there because I got nothing else to do 24/7 right now.
Well, I have to say, on Reese's book club, video that you did with her, I mean, for someone that's quarantining inside, you look fabulous. So I just have to say that.
Oh. Well, you know what? I inherited all of that from my mother. My hair, my eyes, my skin. She gifted me so many things. Thank you, Marianne.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
You're so welcome. And I say hello to all of your listeners, and I hope you guys have a beautiful day.
Well, thank you, Alka. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new novel, The Henna Artist. The Henna Artist is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers, and of course you can get it on Kindle. Again, if you'd like to connect with Alka, you can at thehennaartist.com for more information. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.